Hi guys, welcome back to the Road to Success MCAT test prep series. This is my sixth video in my psychology subseries where I cover everything you need to know about psychology for the MCAT. This video is titled Social Perception and Development, and I'll be starting off by talking about the various different developmental theories that you need to know for the exam. There are a lot of developmental theories, so please take your time and study each one of them individually. I will also be discussing prejudice and bias, and I'll be wrapping this video up by talking about social stigma and perception. We have a lot to cover today, so let's jump right into it, starting with developmental theories.
Alright, let's start off with a basic review of what we have discussed before. Self-concept is how we evaluate ourselves. The existential self states that we are separate from others, while the categorical self makes sense of living in the world with other people. Carl Rogers' humanistic theory covers the concept of self-image and self-esteem. Self-image is what we believe it is, or what we believe we are, and self-esteem is how much we value ourselves. The ideal self is what we want to be. So when self-esteem is equal to our ideal self, we have a positive self-concept. So I'll just write that here. So self-image and that's equal to our ideal self. That's good. So lastly, we have the loci of control, which I discussed in a previous video. Moving on, let's discuss the various theories of social development. Freud focused a lot on the various stages, and he focused specifically on specific body parts that were seen as pleasure zones for the child. Those are his words, not mine. But anyways, I'll let you guys pause the video and take notes before I move on. Erikson's theory focused more on a crisis that the child will go through at any given life stage. Again, I will pause and I'll let you guys take notes on this, as this is pretty much just a list. We briefly discussed Vygotsky, who stated that language is how adults transmit knowledge to children. These children are naturally inclined to learn language. That being said, I would like to point out that the adult must be cooperative and be more knowledgeable than the child they are conversing with. Kohlberg's model focuses on the concepts of obedience and morality. As a child, we see the world as run by authorities and we do our best to avoid punishments. As we grow older, we realize that there is more than one point of view. In the conventional stage, we try to fit in and maintain social order. Lastly, the post-conventional stage states that we learn that some laws work against the interests of people and that we can learn from our own morals. George Meade believed in the concept of the I and the me. There are three stages to his theory. The preparatory stage is the imitation of others when we are children. The play stage is when we grow more aware of social relationships and imitate professional roles like doctor or fireman. Lastly, the game stage. This is where we recognize that we live in a society. The I and the me develop here. The me is how we perceive or how we believe others perceive us. The I is our response to this. It's how we adjust ourselves to be perceived. Moving on to Charles Cooley, he developed the concept of the looking glass self. This idea states that our sense of self develops from interactions with others. How do I appear to others? What do they think of me? These questions are asked in order for us to revise how we see ourselves. Now let's move on to prejudice and bias, starting with the attribution theory. The attribution theory states that we see the world around us in terms of internal and external dispositions. Internal dispositions are innate traits, while external dispositions are situational traits of the environment. This leads into the concept of the fundamental attribution error, which states that when someone wrongs us, we assume that their error was from their internal dispositions, aka they're a bad person. While if we wrong someone else, it's because of our external dispositions. A good example of this, well, we have an example right here, but another good example would be when we're driving. If someone's speeding past you and suddenly cuts you off, you assume that they're rude, reckless, and incompetent. However, if you're the one overtaking someone suddenly, you're going to tell yourself that it's okay because you need to get to work on time, or something similar to that. Basically, you're giving yourself the benefit of the doubt while you sway others. Stereotypes. We all know what they are. Overarching generalizations about a group that may or may not be true. These generalizations can lead to self-fulfilling prophecies or stereotype threats. Self-fulfilling prophecies state that the reinforcement of stereotypes into one's brain can lead to behaviors that affirm them. Stereotype threats are self-fulfilling prophecies that are based off of one's evaluation of a negative stereotype. For example, on the right here, there's a graph showing the difference in correct responses to a math test split based on gender. The researchers split the patients into two groups and told one group a stereotype that men are much better at math than women. That resulted in the group with the gender difference to see a much larger change in results. Men did much better while women did much worse. I want to point out, before I discuss anything else, that prejudice is not the same as discrimination. Prejudice is a negative thought against a group, while discrimination is an action taken against that group. The frustration-aggression hypothesis states that prejudice is an emotional response. Frustration leads to anger, and we need to take that anger out on something, and unfortunately that can lead to overgeneralizations of entire groups. You may already be familiar with this, but take note that prejudice and discrimination are based on physical characteristics, as well as ethnicity, power, social class, and prestige. Our discussion about prejudice opens up the world of stigmas. Prejudice and discrimination are social stigmas. Self-stigma is when the internalization of these social stigmas cause you to reject society. Social circles can fight the internalization of stigmas and maintain a positive life outlook. Let's wrap things up with social perception. First impressions are the most important thing in starting relationships. Primacy bias states that this is the most important thing, and that it helps you form positive opinions about yourself, as well as others forming positive opinions about you. The recency bias also states that your most recent actions influence this as well. The halo effect states that people are inherently good or bad. The physical attractiveness stereotype states that attractive people tend to be perceived as having more good traits than unattractive people. The reverse halo effect states that even if someone has the same skills as someone we have a positive impression of, if we have a negative impression of that person, we will see them as less. The just world hypothesis states that noble acts are performed by individuals, while evil acts will be punished. Basically, you get what you deserve. When this idea is threatened, we either adopt rational techniques, like accepting reality or preventing it from happening again, or we adopt irrational techniques, like denial or reinterpreting events. Lastly, let's have a discussion about ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is the favoritism of one race or ethnicity, or in-group, over all others, who we consider the outgroups. The in-group will prefer the people in their group while demonizing the ones outside of it. This eventually leads to group polarization and eventually hatred towards other groups for the sake of propping up the in-group as the best group. That's all I have for you guys today. We discussed a lot of concepts, specifically social perception, stigmas, prejudice. Once again, I want to point out that prejudice does not equal discrimination. Prejudice is a thought, while discrimination is an action. But yeah, moving even farther back, these moral development, social development, all these different theories are very important. Feel free to take notes, pause the videos, and get all these down. But other than that, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and happy studying.